Hey guys, if you hear some background noise, it's because I have a heater on. Sorry about that. But I'm making a small video to make a small rant about writing, and the reason I'm doing that is because I didn't purchase the novel, but I almost got a novel the other night because I wanted to support a new author on their book, and I won't say who it is, and I won't say which the novel is, because honestly, it doesn't really matter. Even without all the moral, like me not wanting to call them out on stuff, it really doesn't matter, and I'll tell you why. But this video is going to be about how to start a story. And there are a few ways you can do it, and a few ways you really should not start a story. And you might be wondering, why would you listen to me? Why the hell should you listen to someone named Poohead189 randomly on YouTube about how to write a story? Because that is what I always ask whenever I check anyone's YouTube. Why should I listen to this person? What credentials do they have? Is this someone who really knows what they're talking about? And I'll tell you my credentials, really. I've been writing fantasy for 10 years. I've published 2 short stories, one for a campaign setting called Suntarim, and the other for a short story that I indie published recently, but I won't talk about it now. I might make a video on it at some point, but I hate shilling my own work kind of stuff. And I've also written over 1,000 pages of fantasy literature. I haven't published most of it, but I've had a lot of practice, essentially. And also, if you count reading as a practice, knowing, which honestly the best authors say that reading is the best practice. I've read about 2 hours a night since I was 12, and I'm 28 now. So, that's about something. I mean, obviously not every night, but most nights. The majority of them. So, yeah, I'm a huge nerd of literature. And this book I read the other night started in a certain way, and this is not the exact lines, I'm paraphrasing. But it started in a way that you should never start a novel. Now, let me be clear. If you find a novel that starts this way, that does not mean it will be a bad novel. In fact, whenever I see a novel that starts that way, that is not an immediate way for me to say no. If I've already bought this novel, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, I wasted my money. I'm going to grit my teeth and say I'm going to get through the next few pages because I know after this it's going to be gone. Because most novels that start out this way are actually pretty good. But the way they start it does not help their novel at all. And it starts in the way of, like, how do I put it? Derek woke up frightened. Where was he? Who was he? Where was Margaret? He remembered the dream. Stop him right there. Derek woke up. 1, who the hell is Derek? Why should I care? 2, who the hell is Margaret and why should I care? 3, where is he? And again, why should you care? And then they continue on with stuff like they should have told Robert what they were going to do, or things just like the car was still broken, and no context on any of it. And the author begins this way because they think it is suspenseful and that it catches the reader, when really it makes you really not care. It makes you really, really just not want to follow with the story. Now again, I usually go past that. I mean, I still read it, but none of it's going in my head. I read it just so I can make sure I don't miss anything that will actually catch me, but none of it goes in my head. But I know in 3 pages it's going to be written like a regular story. A regular story being one that's written well, and that's written that has context, background, backdrops. You know, maybe a better way to start that would have been like, he woke up bathed in sweat. The moonlight, you know, peered through the windows onto his bed, and his wife was gone. Where would his wife be? Margaret never actually left often. He knew that Robert was fixing his car at the moment. Would she have gone to check that at this hour? You know, like, all of that explanation, I added so much context to all of that shit, and it wasn't even... Sorry, I know I sound really annoyed, but, like, I have not had a lot of sleep the last few weeks, so pardon me. But honestly, I had a better example earlier, but like I said, I've not had a lot of sleep. But you know what I mean. You add context to it. You add context to what you're talking about. I don't care if it's the beginning. What you could do, if you want suspense, 2 good ways to give suspense is 1, add context to what you're talking about while also making suspense, like what I just did, or 2, start with an action. Start with what I do, tried and true, because I write fantasy or science fiction, combat. You know, like if you talk about someone blocking a sword and the metal clanging on each other, and then your guy, you know, let's say I don't want to go with Aragorn because that'd be too Eladar. I have a character named Eladar in my stories. Eladar blocked a sword. Like Eladar's sword clanged off the other sword, and in a rapid flurry, like he backed the conquistador into a corner, and the stone walls were no protection for him now. You know, like, you already get what's going on somewhat. You know that he's in a stone courtyard somewhere, and conquistador shows you what kind of time period he's at. Stuff like that. Like, my character Eladar is not in any historical time period. He's in a fantasy world, and there's no conquistadors in that world. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, if I was to write a story like that, it would add stuff. You know, and then, of course, you continue with like, having Eladar think. You know, have him think of just, like, things like this training session was far less planned out than most, and was far more deadly. And he didn't know why he was being tested in such a way. But he was not going to be one to be taken out in this manner. Like, obviously, I'm not writing right now, not doing a very good narration, but you know what I mean? Like, you start thinking about stuff. He starts thinking, which adds more context. You know? Don't ever start a story with someone being like, he turned the corner. Where was he? Who was chasing him? He had no idea. You know, it just, and then already by that point, I'm just like, no, please stop. Like, I don't care who's chasing you now. It's just stuff like, you know, there's so many better ways you could do it. And I also realize this is probably not like a meat and potatoes kind of video. But, and I wish I could read the person's work verbatim, but, like, I don't want to be an asshole. Now, I'll show you a good way to start a story as well. A way that I didn't make up. It's a way that my favorite author, R.A. Salvatore, wrote a story. And let me get it real quick. By the time you read this, I might be dead. I say might, but it's only a question of courage now. That provides no context, and yet somehow that enthralled me. Because of the manner of which he spoke. It wasn't being in a quantitative place where you were having to ask the question, who's there, what's going on? He said, I might be dead. but he gave context of the might in a way saying it was only a question of courage. So it's not, it's not suicide. You know that it has to do with something that he was tentative about doing. But, it brings so much with those two first sentences, and the two sentences, which is the best thing you could do, sound cool. It brings a rule of cool to what's going on. And that's just so, as soon as I read it, I was just like, brilliant. And of course it's not like the greatest thing ever. I'm not saying this is like the gold of all writing, but it's just like it started with 2 sentences and it was already better than like the 10 shitty sentences of the other book I read the other day. So the way you should start a novel is with an action that provides context, or a narration that provides context. You do not... Sorry. Fuck off, or narration that provides context. You do not start out with no context, ever. It does not sound suspenseful. It makes you question why you're reading the novel. And again, I'm saying this, if you find a novel like that, you don't need to stop reading, because eventually they will bring context to it. It does not mean, if you do this and you're a writer, it does not mean that you are a bad writer. I know plenty of good writers that have started out like that, and they eventually go, and their books eventually become better in 2 or 3 pages. Not even a long time. It's not like 3 chapters later. It's like 2 or 3 pages later. It becomes better, because then they provide context. But those first few pages, I'm just like, ugh. It really just... It's annoying. I'll say that right now, okay? It's just annoying. So if you just do yourself a favor and don't start your book like that, because it's just not gonna be good. Let's take another example of my tried and true Gotrek and Felix stories. I know I got like 80 different books here, but this is a channel that has a lot of Warhammer on it, and so you'll appreciate it. Let's start with Troll Slayer. Well, I don't even know if I should read this in a Gotrek voice. Damn all meddling coach drivers and all meddling women, Gotrek Gurnison muttered, adding a curse in Dwarfish. You did have to insult the Lady of Soul, didn't you? Felix Jaeger said peevishly. As things are, we're lucky they didn't just shoot us, if you can call it lucky to be dumped in the Reichwald on Geheimitschnacht. Eve, I really should have thought this earlier, because I can't pronounce that very well. And they have a conversation talking about what just occurred and why they're stuck where they are. And that's a lot better. Or he could have started out with them being thrown out of the coach by the person that had the rifle. That would have provided a lot of context too. Just don't ever start a novel providing no context. Don't start a short story that... Well, okay. Short stories, maybe. Maybe. Hardly ever, but maybe. Because short stories can be a lot more poetic. You don't need to focus on plot much, or as much. You need to focus on people doing things and prose. So there is a very, very small chance, if you're writing an extremely short story, like 3,000 words, maybe you can do it, because that's what someone's looking for. They're looking for no real context. They're looking for prose and to be jumped into the middle of a story and then carried for a very small amount of time, to be jumped out of it, to have a small poetic ending that, it is. But that's not like a story. That's not like a something where you sit down by a fire and, sip whatever is your drink of choice and enjoy a story, or lay in bed and read a story. That's just quick fiction, or flash fiction, stuff like that. You can do it with flash fiction, but not with anything above 3,000 words, ever. Okay, sorry if this is kind of uninformative to some of you, but I had to get that off my chest. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support this channel on Patreon, you can. Link in the description below, but obviously if you don't want to, you don't have to, because I hate making people do that. So, thanks.